Thank you so much for being here today. When we talk about climate crisis, do you expect that we will start perhaps talking about the Arctic, how it's melting, or perhaps in the Amazonas, and how the fires are destroying one of the most precious ecosystems that we have in our planet? But today, I want to start our journey in a different place. I want to start our journey in the Chauvet Cave, a finite space where we are confronted with an abyss of time. 1,500 human generations have born and perished since the first paintings were drawn here in Chauvet. Yet, their power remains untouched. The vivacity of the movement and the spirituality embodied by these figures creates a sort of threshold that goes beyond the tangible. The cave walls oozes a unique feeling. Perhaps this is due to the fact that, as the anthropologist Jean-Claude argued, Homo sapiens is indeed Homo spiritualis. The ability to make tools defines us less than the need to create a belief system that influences nature. One could call, perhaps, Chauvet the birthplace of humanity. But nevertheless, alongside our spirituality, the handprints in the naked walls of the cave were the birthplace of another distinctive features of our species, the desire of bypassing biological limits, of leaving a long-lasting impact. In that sense, these cave handprints are the first vestige of the ecological footprint. This was the opening act of the Anthropocene, a new geological age marked by the impact of human activities on the environment, a destructive quest for the subjugation of nature to satisfy our greed. 32 millennia has passed since the first paintings were drawn in Chauvet. This may seem overwhelming for our mind, but it is hugely insignificant. If we compress the Earth's geological time in a 24-hour clock, humans appear only 3 seconds before midnight. 3 seconds. Yet, in these seconds, we have surpassed the biophysical limits of the Earth. We have become a geological force and triggered the genesis of an unprecedented ecological disaster. In fact, we have transformed nature so drastically that even if today all human activity and all humans disappeared, the Earth will need 6 million years to fully recover. What have we done in these 3 seconds? Well, in these 3 seconds, we have created a new sixth extinction, mass extinction, already the 6th one. Up to 150 species become extinct each day. Today, we are living with 150 species less than we were living yesterday. According to the IPBES, 1 in every 80 species are in danger of becoming extinct in the following decades. And following WWF estimates, in only 50 years, we will have wiped out 68% of the population of vertebrates worldwide. But in these 3 seconds, we have also polluted the ground that feeds us, the water that we drink, and the air that we breathe, to the extent that this is the cost of 7 million people dying each year. In these 3 seconds, we have also produced the famous climate crisis, a crisis that is threatening to trigger the collapse of our ecosystems. And we must confront reality. If our ecosystems collapse, our societies will unavoidably collapse with them. Indeed, the World Economic Forum believes that the destructive potential and probability of a climate disaster is much higher than the nuclear warfare. You can see it here in this chart. The farther to the right the problem is, the more probable it is. And the higher the problem, the more destructive. So you can see up there the climate action failure. And all these green problems are related to ecology. There is no doubt about this. But the main problems that humanity must face in the following years are unavoidably related to the ecological crisis. But we shouldn't be surprised by this reality. We knew it already. We knew already in 2010 that the climate change had caused more than 5 million deaths. And we knew already that that number will only get worse and worse over the years. Indeed, it's getting worse and worse. We now know that the estimates are that by 2050, we'll be facing a number of 216 million refugees. And we also know that a world that is warmer by 4 degrees Celsius in average has a carrying capacity of 1 billion humans. Currently, we are 7.9 billion humans living on our planet. How could we arrive to this point? How did we go from the expression of our spirituality in the Chauvet cave to the systematic destruction of the environment? I believe that to answer this, we should go back in time, much earlier than the Great Acceleration and the Industrial Revolution. The ecological crisis indeed began with our uprooting from wilderness and the reification of nature. We destroy what we cannot feel. We destroy what we don't identify as part of our own community. Such an evolution in our relation to nature seems to be confirmed by already an observation by Judith Thurman, who she made at the Chauvet cave. And she said, art possesses both a womb and a sepulchre. Now, I'm not trying here to make a doomsday speech. The reality that we are facing is catastrophic. There should be no doubt about this. The facts and the science are there. But I have faith in our ability to mitigate it. in our resilience and our capacity to create opportunities out of this crisis. We are living fascinating times. We have the unprecedented consciousness that an historic era is coming to an end. Such a feeling was depicted by Kim Stanley Robinson in the following quote, which I would like to share with you. He wrote, "Every moment is strange. You feel this when you look around. Now is stranger than ever. We are flying forward at an accelerated rate. History is speeding up. Both catastrophe and utopia are possible from this moment, while the zone in between them gets less and less likely. A stark choice, and we're choosing it now with everything that we do and don't do. We are the primitives of an unknown civilization." Such consciousness that there's a historic tipping point upon us comes to a society with an exceptional transformative capacity at the same time. Education has never been so widespread. Technology is offering us groundbreaking solutions, and the world's population has never been so interconnected and so engaged in activism. It is not knowledge that what we are lacking. We have enough. Not technology. What we should lack to solve the ecological crisis is courage. The courage needed to understand the significance of what we already know and act consequently. And so, we arrive to the essential question. Why don't we react to this reality? It's a question that has puzzled me since I began my advocacy for climate action. I grew up in a village of northern Spain, appalled by the intensity of agricultural practices that are destroying our natural heritage. I couldn't understand how this would become so detached from nature. Our interaction with our surroundings is cold, indifferent, passive, and unaware. Perhaps this is what will surprise more our ancestors if they could see our societies nowadays, and not necessarily technological development. We are no longer moved by the singing of the birds, by the silence of the woods, by the sunsets and sunrises, nor are we overwhelmed by the infinity of the sky, or by the eternity that is contained in a single drop of water. Our emotional connection with nature agonizes. Nature is nevertheless the ethos of humanity. In contact with it, a space enabling a self-construction emerges. Recovering that connection is the very beginning of climate action, and to do so, we really need new narratives that will catalyze behavioral change while triggering dialogue and change-driven initiatives within our communities. Awareness is not enough. I soon discovered this, that even those who understand the challenges that we are facing today with the climate crisis, they get caught up in a sterile dynamic, which I like to call active inaction. By active inaction, I refer to a strategy based on an event of spectacular visual strength, which unleashes the collective frustration without using it to initiate any concrete transformations, neither creating regenerative spaces or reflections. In short, active inaction could be described as a sort of shouting to the present without asking to the past, nor wishing nothing to the future. Take as an example those sudden demonstrations or international summits that hog all public and media attention for some days before disappearing without leaving any lasting legacy, without even gaining a space in the collective memory. The lack of determination, organization, and disempowerment towards change are intrinsic characteristics of active inaction. But we go back still to the same question. Why do we still consent to this theater? Why do we look to this focus screen which is hiding the dramatic reality of the ecological crisis? Why we get caught up in active inaction? Why don't we react? The reason is quite complex, but alongside the divorce from nature and its destruction, we have become also detached from reality itself. Korean philosopher Byung-Chul Han claims that the acceleration of contemporary life is causing a lack of being. This sudden loss of imaginary was replaced by a new set of systematic fictions which were enhanced by capitalism. These fictions led us to a world which we like to describe as a VUCA reality, a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous one. Indeed, Zygmunt Bauman liked to use the term of liquid modernity to refer to our times. We perceive what is near as if it was far away, the natural as exotic. We perceive the images as if they were holy, and the change as if it was unreachable. We are locked up in a noxious inertia which is only bearable thanks to the artificial stimuli derived from the system's fiction. A process which has concluded in the simulation of a self-compliant microcosmos which creates a false notion of individuality. We have become victims of the stimuli, societies paralyzed by powerlessness. But this social drama has also like a very individual dynamic and dimension. Byung-Chul Han believes that the modern individual is a subject of productivity. He believes that productivity has indeed become our reasons for being. We decide to exploit ourselves until exhaustion only to reach the highest rates of productivity. Consumption, on the other hand, subconsciously satisfies our void of individuality without forcing us to confront our privileges. It is a complex and total way of alienation. Slovene philosopher Slavoj Žižek claims that the problem is not whether we satisfy our desires or not. The real problem of our time is how do we know what we desire. We are governed by inertia that makes the system fictions degenerate into a total feeling of powerlessness, once again. But yet, we don't perceive this reality as oppressive. Walter Benjamin already warned us. He wrote already in the 20th century that the individual self-annihilation has come to a point where it allows a whole society to watch its own destruction with aesthetic pleasure. This is a standpoint where we are currently at in the climate crisis. But alongside the systematic destruction of the environment occurs a systematic destruction of human spirituality. Each forest that we fell is a fall of ourselves. Each extinct species diminishes our own spirit. In this context, we are in a desperate need of disruptive narratives. Narratives which help us to reconcile the human, the natural, and the social, but also the emotional. We require from a new imaginary sparking climate action, new narratives to bring utopia rather than catastrophe, to articulate innovative movements, to tackle powerlessness, and to trigger the shift into a sustainable paradigm. But how can we develop these narratives? Joaquín Araujo actually claims that we should follow the following principle. Feeling the feelings. Insist that we are part of what is being quartered, destroyed. We must advocate for nothing else than the reform of the human condition itself. And to do so, I suggest that the connection with nature, it is used as a transformative matrix from which we can pursue Pindaro's ideal, become what we are. Yes, we do have the capital, social, economic, technological, to hold the climate and social crises. We really do. But enacting this requires that we walk back into nature, that we break free from this inertia, from the consumption spiral and from powerlessness. And the only way in which we can tackle this, I believe, is through the new narratives. One of Haruki Murakami's characters says in one of his novels, responsibility begins with the power to imagine. And I believe this is true. Narratives provide us a paradigm from which we can ignite social transformation while self-constructing our lives and our consciousness. To develop them, we just need to walk back into nature and its feelings. A new connection with nature offers us a paradigm for deconstructing the most noxious fictions of the system we are currently living in. In contact with nature, being connection diametrically opposed to consumption, imagination expands and emotions are enhanced. In contact with nature, the opportunity for self-construction appears. Perhaps, if we can learn something out of this journey that took us from the shoved paintings to the darkest hour of the Anthropocene, is the following. We need to feel in order to know. We need to know in order to act. And we need to act in order to live. At this point, there's only one thing left for me, and it's close this talk quoting the Peruvian poet César Vallejo and this verse that says, Ya va a venir el día, ponte el alma. The day is about to come, put on your soul. Thank you so much.